Senator Tom Cotton, what a song for you.
Good morning.
Great song, much better than I could sing it.
Yes, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Welcome to Washington.
Listen,
Thank you.
glad to be here. Thanks for being our first guest. You're a busy guy.
I'm pretty busy these days.
Yeah.
You ever use Uber?
Tommy's never used Uber till this trip.
On occasion, I do. Yeah,
You do?
I was like you until 4 years ago. I didn't know what Uber was.
Yeah.
Listen,
Apparently, I just learned something recently too. There's something called Venmodo.
I don't know about that.
All the millennials on my staff use. Venmo. My
Venmo.
20-something staffer here is telling me it's Venmo.
It was funny. Tommy and I got my Uber wasn't working on my phone yesterday, so we had to get a regular cab. And so we asked the cabbie. He said,
Cabbies aren't happy.
said how do you like? He said, oh, he hated Uber. Hate him. And I can't. He was a foreigner. I can't remember how he said. Hey, but he was not happy with a lot of Uber.
Brought it up.
Well, listen. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us. I know you're. Listen, this town is a busy, cranking town, and we're glad to be here. First thing you said is, "What are you guys doing here?"
You know, my old AAU basketball coach Trent Tipton, who should be listening. He's on I-40 driving east to Washington right now with his wife and kids for a summer vacation. Right. And the first thing he said when he texted me this morning was, "What are they doing in Washington?"
Well, the great thing, Tom, is that Roger's never been. Right. Tommy has not been since Reagan was here. I was here for 2 or 3 different presidents, and this town is, you get used to it because you work here. But for Roger's first time, the power here, the history, there's so much.
The city's got juice.
I see the monuments, to see you here, have that song play right there. I tell you, man, it almost brings me to tears, maybe because I'm old or whatever, but I sure do love it.
And I'll say this about the concept of Washington. You hear people on TV complain about Washington a lot, and I'll confess I do that some. When that happens, what they're talking about is some of the things that happen here and what people do here and the negative impacts it has on folks in Arkansas. But the city itself, especially the federal core, about 4 miles from the Capitol building, from which we sit about 3 blocks, to Arlington National Cemetery. You could spend days doing all those things.
Absolutely.
The monuments, the memorials, the museums.
What's the most impressive one to you?
Well, I served at Arlington National Cemetery.
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
To me, probably the
You
most
are
moving.
part of Color Guard?
I was part of what's called the Old Guard, about 1,000 soldiers. I
was on Color Guard, and you'd have to leave your outfit and go serve for 30 days on a Color Guard.
Yeah,
and they don't take no messing around.
Yeah, no, it's very serious. But when you're in the federal core of the city, from the Capitol down the mall across the river to the cemetery, it really reminds you of what makes this country unique and why we're all so special and especially blessed to be Americans.
Amen.
And I imagine y'all are going to be spending a lot of your time doing those things. In the Smithsonian's, at the memorials, going out to
Smithsonian
archives.
Yeah, today, and Bud Cummins is over there, too. We arranged,
hey, Bud.
Hey, Bud. We arranged, Senator, we're going to do the Holocaust Museum at 1. We're going to do the Pentagon at 4, thanks to Alice Stewart. She helped arrange that. And then we're doing the West Wing tonight, which is a cool thing. And so
a good chance you'll see the president.
Well, if Roger he won't know what to do.
I'm going to tweet him that I'm there.
Well, I know. Listen, you've become. The word is that you've become. I don't know. I don't know how to phrase it, but you have a lot of communication with the president.
Yeah, much more so than I ever did with President Obama, and that's not just because I was a Republican. President Obama simply didn't, communicate with members of Congress all that much, to include his own party. The president and I talk pretty regularly and go to the White House regularly. Obviously, I know a lot of people there. H.R. McMaster is National Security Advisor. I helped bring to his attention. I know Reince Priebus from his time as the RNC chairman. The president is, effectively 1/3 of our legislature because of his veto pen. That means that if we want to make progress for the people of Arkansas, if we want to address the issues that Arkansans care about, that the federal government can touch on, that we've got to work with the president. It's great to have an open channel of communication with him and with his cabinet secretaries as well. It makes us a lot more effective for the people of Arkansas.
And we need to let everybody know, sometimes we forget, people can be critical of you, can be supportive, and that you're a senator, but you're also a dad. You are busy raising kids, small kids.
Gabriel and Daniel. Gabriel's a little over 2 years old now, and Daniel's about 6 months old. So.
Wow. And what's the big event with Daniel these days?
He is not quite crawling, but he is scooting a little bit. So if you leave him on the floor to go, check on Gabriel or go to the bathroom or something, you come in, he's flipped over in his stomach and moved about 2 feet.
Oh, my gosh, something's changed. What's changed? And he's sleeping through the night.
He is sleeping through the night,
Your career arc, you think you're in Dardanelle High School, and then you graduate, you go to Harvard. You finish Harvard in 3 years, which is, I'm trying to figure out how you do that. And then you go to law school and then decide, you want to go in active duty. You over in Iraq, right? You know, and now you find yourself, you know, a U.S. senator. And of course, a lot of things in between that. You look back and go, oh my God, so your father now.
He's a movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't have exactly scripted it in this way. I mean, obviously, the decisive point in my life was the 9/11 attacks. You know, if it hadn't been for those attacks, I would have finished law school and gone and been a lawyer, probably for my career. But that changed my life forever, and like it changed a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people. They joined the military, they joined the FBI. They did something to dedicate themselves to public service. Our generation is still relatively young. You know, I'm the youngest senator, but you know that's because the Senate is kind of an old place.
It is.
But,
talk about old guard.
But as my generation of veterans, who you know, kind of the sweet spot is like early 30s to early 40s, gets a little bit older over the next 5 to 10 years. I think we'll see a lot more of those veterans go into elected office for the same reasons that they, you know, left their old lines of work and went into the military 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Ray.
I was just going to say, because of that, and because of the younger group that may be coming in, because it's so divisive, it is either all one way or the other, and that's just it. I mean, is that such a stumbling block that do you see a future where it's going to get back together, where we can all work together for the betterment of our country as a whole?
Yeah. Well, first I'd say it's not as divisive as it may appear. On some of the biggest on some of the biggest issues, we obviously have some serious differences. I think some of the breathless media reporting in the age of Trump doesn't help matters. Yeah. But I can tell you in Congress, you know, I'm one of 534. There's a lot of other Americans who elected other people to send to Congress to represent them, and they often don't see things the way Arkansans do. But that doesn't mean we don't have some overlapping areas of interest or concerns. You know, just this week, I joined a Democrat from Delaware on a bill to improve our patent system to make sure entrepreneurs and inventors in Arkansas have their property rights and their intellectual property protected. A couple years ago, I was one of the first conservative senators to work with Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand, the Democratic senators from New York, on the 9/11 first responder bill to make sure that we're taking care of the firefighters and the police officers who rushed into those towers to save so many lives. So there is actually a lot of bipartisan cooperation.
And you're right. We're going to see that.
And we have a good relationship as well. I mean, you have serious debates.
Sure.
You know, sometimes you're on the Senate floor and you're banging away on each other, and then you walk off the floor and throw your arms around each other's shoulders. So how did you like that one?
Yeah, very good.
You say 9/11 was a defining moment for you. Where were you?
I was sitting in my evidence class at Harvard Law School. You know, that was before text messaging and smartphones and Wi-Fi. So we sat in that class for 45 minutes or an hour before we walked out and saw
transfixed
a couple hundred people outside, kind of all in a daze.
Yeah.
I just learned that something had happened in New York and went to the Student Union and watched it there for the next few hours.
Yeah. You are here in D.C., which we are a sports show. I'm not really sure at times we really are, but we were talking about the Washington sports scene and the history here. Do you have any time? Of course, you're a Sound Lizard. You love the Razorbacks. You know, one of your staff takes care of the Razorbacks, Keith Stokes. Do you pay attention to much to the sports right now?
I follow Nationals.
You do?
Nationals baseball team. You get home in the evenings, and they've got a local cable channel like Fox Sport Net in Arkansas where you can watch the Rangers most night.
Right.
So, if I flip on the TV in between bath time for the boys or before I go to sleep, you can catch the Nationals game.
Yeah, well, listen, Washington's leading their division.
Yeah, I mean, they've run away with the NL East, so, they're basically just poised for the playoffs now. They've got to fix their bullpen over the next 3 months before they get into the playoffs.
Yeah. So if you had to root for the Cowboys or the Redskins, who are you rooting for?
No, Cowboys.
Okay. Even though we were talking about back in the glory days, you had, the Redskins and the Cowboys, that was probably the great rivalry. Yeah.
The Redskins, like any team, they only play here 8 times a year, and the stadium is so far around, it's so hard to get to, whereas Nationals Park is just about 8 blocks from where we are. Baseball is just an easier sport to enjoy. You walk up to it and buy tickets.
True.
Washington baseball has a long and somewhat inglorious history. The old line after Teddy Roosevelt won the Nobel Peace Prize. Washington, first in war, first in peace, last in the American League.
Oh, did he? I've never heard that. That's outstanding. Speaking of sports, I thought your lifestyle would have been more like a coach. In that, coaches very rarely see their family. They're working all hours, but you say I
try to keep my family, together with me whenever we can. So right now my boys are young, not in school, so they can be with me in Washington when we're in recession. You could go out, you all see this while you're here, you could go out to 3 different receptions and 2 dinners every night.
Sure.
Almost every night. I just, when we're done voting, I go back to our little place and have dinner and put the boys to sleep. Then when we're home for our recesses, I try to have them home with me whenever.
That's good for you and the family.
I think so. Yeah, I have some of my friends who have families. They talk about the strain of being here for 4 days and 3 nights a week without them, and then when you're home on the weekends, you're home for a week or two at recess. You're pulled in both directions because on the one hand you miss your kids and you want to be with them, but on the other hand you need to be out speaking to your constituents. So that works for us right now.
Will we be able to call you at any point today? Yes. The odds of us doing something at one of these tours that will get us in trouble or could get Roger arrested.
The good news is that Washington, D.C. is an instrumentality of the federal government, so all the law enforcement agencies here are technically federal employees. So maybe I can get you sprung on bail if you get in trouble.
Very good.
You could, we're going to try.
Get out of jail free card right there. You heard it.
We're going to try to tour as much as we can, but like you said, there's so much to see here. It's like for Roger,
Can't do it every day.
He wants to see Ford's Theater.
I see that.
The West Wing's going to be cool tonight. I mean, there's just so much. The Holocaust Museum, which I have not seen. World War II, I haven't seen.
Absolutely.
It's just not enough time to do it.
There's no way in 4 days.
Not in our time.
If you had to rank the top 3, if you were giving us advice, what would you say as far as?
I would probably try to set aside couple hours to be at Arlington.
That's where we are tomorrow.
So you go in the front there. The soldiers there used to call the tourist path Hollywood. Because that's where, from the front gate when you get off in a cab or a bus or a subway and walk up from there to the Tomb of the Unknown, which is obviously the biggest highlight. You pass, the JFK gravesite and a few other places. Yeah. Not many funerals are conducted there because the grave space is all filled up. Yeah. When you did have a funeral there, though, it's called a Hollywood funeral because the tourists could hear the heels clicking when you walked or the horses, so they'd kind of flock to it like ants to sugar. Right. But I'd try to get off to some of the other places as well. Like make sure you go to Section 60, which is in the southern part of the cemetery. Okay. That's where all the soldiers, from the soldiers who were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan who are buried in the cemetery are buried in Section 60. Oh. So it's been called the saddest 4 acres in America.
And one of your staff told me, Dylan told me that we had a special Arkansan.
So we were just out last week in Section 60 for Larry Roberts' funeral. Larry was a private first class in the Marine Corps who died in November 1943. Wow. Tarawa in the Southern Pacific. We have the POW, something called the POW MIA Accounting Agency, which still goes to the greatest lengths to identify the remains of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, usually from World War II and Korea, sometimes from Vietnam. Oftentimes it's plane crashes. In this case, the fighting in Tarawa was so grave, over 1,000 Marines were killed, that they couldn't identify all the remains. They worked there for 2 years to identify them all. They couldn't. About 2 years ago, though, an unknown, unmarked gravesite was discovered. About 3 dozen sets of remains there, and they identified Private Roberts' remains about 2 months ago. Wow. And that's, he had a couple family members. They're not from Arkansas. I guess they'd be first cousins once removed. The children of his parents' siblings, and they're both elderly. I think one from Pennsylvania and Florida. So the important thing about that funeral for all of our listeners to hear and for today's troops to know is that no matter what happens to you, if you go missing, if you're captured, if you're killed, that our country will spare no expense and it will bear any burden to find you and bring you back home.
That's exactly what I was thinking as you were telling all that.
Larry Roberts, 18 years old. He wasn't married. He didn't have a kid. He doesn't have direct descendants. Almost all of his relatives are gone. That funeral was for Larry Roberts, and that funeral was for all the Larry Roberts who are out on the front lines today to remind them the commitment we'll make to them.
Amen. We have to ask real quick too. Obviously, the shooting that happened last week. For your wife and for everybody has to be a little concerned about that. Has it changed anything about the way you guys handle yourself, security, those kind of things?
I'm my own security.
Yes.
But it certainly, it reminds people that they need to take certain precautions. If there are going to be large gatherings of congressmen or senators in a public place, I suspect you'll have security there in the future. When we're in Arkansas, if we have big events, big town halls or something, the local authorities are always cooperative, in terms of crowd control and just making sure that everyone is safe. And that's not just for me. That's for 1,000 people that come out to West Little Rock or 2,200 people that come to a town hall in Springdale.
I got to give you credit for that. I know some say, well, that's what he's supposed to do. Tommy, I don't know if you saw the video. I think you did when you were in Northwest Arkansas. It was brutal. And people, they come there and they, instead of wanting to have comfortable dialogue, they want to shout you down. And I give you credit. to keep your composure up there for an hour and a half answering questions with 2,000 people screaming at you. I mean, it's like a bunch of...
It was like one of us was up there. They were pouncing us.
Yeah.
I've had crowds like that before.
Listen, you almost went nuts on the airplane yesterday, and that was just for airline. This guy's got...
I mean, so in other words, I've told people, you don't have to have a gathering that big. You can have 100. But you chose to let... And I think that was a great testament to you to say, hey, all right, come on, and I'll answer any question.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's anytime as a politician you get a couple thousand of your voters together, you take the opportunity to do so. Not that many people normally want to pay attention.
You're right. I know. Right. That definitely things have changed. And we're going to have Senator Bozeman on a little bit later today. Your relationship working with him?
Very, very good relationship. No, the Arkansas delegation has a very good relationship. I obviously see John more since we work in the same chamber. You'll see if you go up to the Capitol, the House and the Senate chambers are very close together, but it's probably the longest 200 yards in Washington because our schedules are just so different, and the pace at which we work and the way we work is so different. That's the way the Founding Fathers designed it. It wanted a very different perspective in the House and the Senate, but I have a very good relationship as well with Rick and French and Steve and Bruce too. We're kind of spread out over the right committees to represent Arkansas's interests well and work together well as a team.
Wow. Well, thanks for being with us. You got to go to another. Yes, you got a busy day today. Crazy day.
Right. Give me a call if y'all find yourself.
I want you to put something. Introduce to the Senate the new law. Halloween should be the last Friday of every October.
Yeah, we're going to work on that.
Work on that for you.
Pressing business.
That's right.
Tom Cotton, everybody.
Thank you,
Tom.
Thanks a lot for being here. Back in a moment.